The day the giant alien appeared in the skies, no one could have imagined how small humanity really was. It came slowly, gliding across the atmosphere like a living mountain, a creature so massive that even the largest satellites looked like toys next to it. At first, people thought it might be a natural phenomenon, some cloud formation or a strange aurora. But soon, it became clear that this was no ordinary skyward event. The object moved with purpose. It breathed, somehow, in a rhythm that made the air itself tremble. From the observation deck of the International Space Research Station, Dr. Lena Shah watched in awe. She had spent her entire career studying exoplanets and distant galaxies, but nothing she had ever seen prepared her for this. The creature's eyes, or what she assumed were eyes, glimmered with colors she had never been able to name. They shifted constantly, like liquid rainbows refracted through a prism. Instruments tried to measure its size. Every reading failed. The alien was simply too big. "This can't be real," whispered one of her colleagues. His voice trembled. "How is it even possible?" Lena didn't answer. She felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. Humanity had always dreamed of encountering intelligent life, and here it was. But it was not the small, human-scale alien they had imagined from books or movies. This was colossal beyond comprehension. And yet, in its vastness, there was a hint of intelligence, as though the universe itself had handed them a puzzle. Communication attempts began immediately. Signals were sent, from radio waves to complex mathematical sequences. Scientists worldwide tried to reason with the alien, to understand it, but nothing worked. The creature did not respond to words, lights, or sound. It moved, yes, but its gestures were massive and ambiguous. A wave of its arm could knock satellites off course. A turn of its head could cast enormous shadows over cities below. Humans began to panic. Was it hostile? Was it merely curious? Or did it not notice them at all, treating Earth as a tiny, insignificant speck? In the midst of the chaos, Lena noticed something that others missed. The alien's movements, while massive and unpredictable, followed patterns. Its gestures repeated in cycles, small irregularities hidden within the enormous motions. Where others saw randomness, Lena saw rhythm. She began to chart the movements meticulously, noting every shift in posture, every change in the way the alien's colors flickered. It was like trying to decode a language written in the wind, or music composed on a scale too vast for human ears. Her curiosity led her to propose something radical. "Maybe it's not listening to our signals," she said to the station director. "Maybe it communicates differently. Maybe it understands touch, or a form of interaction we haven't imagined." The suggestion was met with silence, then polite dismissal. Touch. The creature was too big. No human could reach it, and no spacecraft could interface with its immense body. Yet Lena persisted. She designed a series of models, small drones that could mimic human gestures on a larger scale. They would not touch the alien in the literal sense, but could interact with the energy fields it emitted, the subtle vibrations that seemed to ripple from its massive form. Weeks passed. Humanity watched from a distance, helpless and anxious. Governments debated whether to send military crafts, but no one dared act. To approach directly seemed absurd. And yet, while political leaders argued, Lena and her team worked quietly, refining the drones, programming them to respond in ways that mirrored human empathy. Every motion, every signal had to feel deliberate yet gentle, a way to show the alien that humans were intelligent and worthy of communication. Then, one morning, a breakthrough occurred. The alien moved differently. Its gestures slowed, almost as if it were observing the small drones dancing in the air around it. The scientists held their breath. Could it be noticing? Could it understand? Lena's heart raced. She remembered the first day she had seen this creature, how impossible it seemed, how overwhelming. And now, perhaps for the first time, there was hope. The alien's attention shifted unmistakably toward one of the drones. It hovered in its massive shadow, trembling slightly as though sensing the energy emanating from the device. And then, something remarkable happened. The alien extended a finger-like appendage, or something akin to a finger, toward the drone. It moved slowly, carefully, with deliberate curiosity. The entire world seemed to hold its breath. For the first time, the alien's colossal form expressed what could only be interpreted as focus, a kind of awareness that suggested understanding. Lena realized that the impossible might be possible. Humanity was small, yes, dwarfed by the vastness of the alien, but their ingenuity, their empathy, and their willingness to think differently allowed them to reach where brute force could not. The alien was not violent. It was not destructive. It was confused, enormous, and isolated, trying to make sense of the world around it, and here were humans offering a bridge. As days passed, the alien's gestures became more structured. It began repeating certain movements in response to the drones. Patterns emerged, sequences that resembled basic questions and answers. Lena and her team documented everything, comparing the alien's responses with the signals sent. Slowly, a rudimentary dialogue formed. The alien seemed fascinated by the human ability to solve problems, to create, to invent. Its eyes, or whatever served as its sensory organs, followed every motion with intense curiosity. The world outside the station watched with a mixture of awe and disbelief. News outlets broadcast the enormous alien slowly interacting with tiny human creations, and social media exploded with speculation and theories. Humanity had always dreamed of making contact with life beyond Earth. Now they had. But this contact was not about weapons or dominance. It was about understanding, empathy, and cleverness. Lena, observing the patterns late one night, had a revelation. "It's not just looking at the drones," she whispered to herself. "It's learning from them." The alien was adapting, changing its behavior in response to human interaction. And in doing so, it was showing humans something profound. Scale did not determine intelligence or understanding. Creativity, patience, and ingenuity could overcome what seemed impossible. The first part of this unprecedented encounter ended with the alien hovering closer to Earth, massive and awe-inspiring, while a single drone approached its enormous form. Slowly, carefully, the alien extended one massive limb in what could only be described as invitation. Lena's hands shook as she initiated the sequence she had spent weeks perfecting. For the first time, humanity had reached out, not through brute force or fear, but through thought, empathy, and the courage to try something new. And in that moment, the alien seemed to pause. It tilted its colossal head, studying the tiny human creation with wonder. The gap between species, between scales of existence, felt almost impossibly vast. And yet, for the first time, it seemed bridgeable. Humanity had taken its first real step toward understanding a creature larger than any planet, larger than any problem they had ever faced. And as the sun rose over the horizon, casting long shadows of both Earth and alien, Lena knew that the adventure was only beginning. The alien lingered above the oceans, massive and motionless, its shimmering surface reflecting sunlight like a living mirror. Humanity had never seen anything so immense, so impossibly vast, and yet so curious. From the space station, Lena Shah watched its movements with careful attention, her heart beating in rhythm with the slow, deliberate motions of the colossal being. Every gesture it made seemed to carry meaning, though the scale made it impossible to interpret directly. For weeks, Lena and her team had tried to decipher the alien's patterns. They used drones, lights, and pulses of energy to mimic gestures they believed the creature might understand. Every day brought tiny signs of progress, an arm raised slightly differently, a change in color pattern, a vibration through the air. But it was slow work. The alien did not respond in ways humans were accustomed to. It was neither hostile nor friendly. It was simply observing. Lena knew that understanding required patience. She spent hours alone in the observation chamber, recording every movement and subtle change in the alien's form. Nights blended into days as she mapped sequences, looking for repetition, rhythm, and clues hidden within the vast motions. At first, she felt discouraged. It was overwhelming to work with a being so much larger than the planet itself. Each gesture carried multiple layers of meaning, and one small misinterpretation could send their entire research off course. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lena noticed something unusual. The alien paused mid-motion, a rare stillness that drew the attention of everyone monitoring the situation. It tilted its head slowly, and its enormous eyes, or what she believed functioned as eyes, fixed on one of the smaller drones. The device hovered steadily in the air, pulsating with soft lights and vibrations designed to attract attention without aggression. Lena leaned closer to the monitors. "It's looking, really looking," she whispered. She had never felt such a mix of excitement and fear. The alien's attention was focused entirely on something they had made, something tiny in comparison to its colossal size. It was a human creation, yet the alien treated it with care, as if it recognized intelligence beyond the surface. For the next several hours, the alien repeated a pattern of gestures in response to the drone. Each time the drone emitted a sequence of pulses, the alien mimicked them with subtle adjustments. It was as though they were dancing, a communication of motion rather than words. The research team grew excited. For the first time, they weren't guessing blindly. The alien had begun responding to their attempts, creating a loop of interaction that could become the foundation for understanding. Lena suggested a new approach. "If it is responding to gestures, we need to think like it thinks," she explained to her team. "We can't just send random signals. We have to anticipate patterns, mimic logic it might understand. And then, maybe, just maybe, it will show us something it has never shared with any other being." They designed new drones that could move with greater flexibility, able to shift and respond instantaneously. They programmed sequences based on mathematical patterns found in nature, Fibonacci spirals, wave forms, and even the movement of planets. Each motion was deliberate, aimed at attracting the alien's attention in a way that was neither threatening nor overwhelming. The first trial with the new drones was cautious. The devices lifted into the sky, performing a slow, sweeping dance. At first, the alien remained still, its massive shadow falling over the ocean below. Then, slowly, it began to respond. A limb moved in synchronization with the drones, a vibration traveled through the air, and a low hum of energy pulsed outward. The scientists monitored the readings, watching as data streamed in from every instrument. The alien was learning to mirror their gestures. Lena felt a surge of hope. This was no longer a one-sided observation. It was a dialogue, subtle but undeniable. For the first time, humanity had reached a point where they could influence the behavior of a being larger than life itself. The alien's movements were deliberate, thoughtful, and curious. It was exploring the limits of interaction with creatures far smaller than itself, creatures capable of ingenuity it had not expected. Days turned into weeks. Each interaction became more complex. The alien began to experiment, changing the patterns it mimicked, introducing variations that challenged the human team. Lena realized that the alien was testing them, gauging their intelligence, patience, and creativity. Every adjustment in the drone sequences was met with a new response. It was learning from them as much as they were learning from it. One morning, a breakthrough occurred. The alien emitted a sequence of vibrations that matched one of the drone patterns almost exactly, but with an added variation. Lena studied the data carefully. It was a question, encoded in movement. The alien was asking something, and for the first time, humans had the tools to answer. The team worked feverishly to interpret the signal. It took hours of analysis, cross-referencing previous gestures and testing variations. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The alien was curious about human creativity, specifically the ability to solve problems using ingenuity rather than strength. It wanted to understand the logic behind human inventions, the reasoning that allowed a small, fragile species to manipulate the world so effectively. Lena felt a sense of pride. Humanity, small and fragile in comparison, was capable of reaching the unimaginable. They had no weapons, no immense size, no raw power to impress the alien. Instead, they had creativity, patience, and empathy. These were their tools, and now they were enough. To respond, the team designed a new sequence. It was not just a movement, but a demonstration, a miniature display of human problem-solving. Small drones formed patterns that solved simple puzzles, built structures, and demonstrated cause-and-effect relationships. It was a subtle way of showing intelligence. Without words or symbols the alien could not understand. The alien observed the sequence with intense focus. Its enormous eyes, or sensory fields, followed every movement. For hours it repeated the gestures, adjusting its massive limbs to mimic the sequences. Then it added something new, a pattern that had not been taught. A ripple of light traveled across its surface, a gesture that seemed to convey approval, fascination, or even delight. Lena's heart soared. They had crossed a threshold. The alien, vast and unknowable, had responded not out of fear or instinct, but with interest. It was learning, experimenting, and communicating. Humanity's ingenuity had bridged a gap that had once seemed impossible. Word of the progress spread across the world. People watched in amazement as enormous shadows shifted in the sky, moving in harmony with tiny drones performing dances, puzzles, and demonstrations. Social media was filled with speculation, excitement, and awe. For the first time, humans everywhere felt a shared sense of accomplishment. They were not just observers in the universe. They were participants, capable of interacting with beings far beyond their understanding. Despite the excitement, Lena knew this was only the beginning. The alien scale made direct interaction impossible. Even the most advanced drones were tiny compared to its limbs and eyes. To truly understand it, they would need something more, something that combined human creativity with ingenuity on a scale the alien could perceive. Lena began to sketch ideas late at night. She thought of structures, energy fields, and patterns that could communicate on a grand scale. Perhaps they could use the ocean, massive light projections, or coordinated drone formations. The key was to demonstrate intelligence without overwhelming the alien, to show understanding while respecting its size and complexity. The alien, meanwhile, continued to observe. Its movements became more precise, more responsive, as if it recognized the effort and care humans were putting into communication. Slowly, it began to approach areas of human habitation, hovering near research stations, moving with caution but unmistakable curiosity. Each day, humanity learned a little more about its behavior, its patterns, and its extraordinary intelligence. One evening, as the sun set behind the horizon, Lena stood at the observation deck, watching the alien's massive shadow stretch across the ocean. She realized that what they were witnessing was unprecedented. No species had ever interacted with a creature of this scale and complexity in this way. And yet, here they were. Humans, small and fragile, were teaching and learning from a being far larger than any planet, a being that had never encountered their kind before. It was a humbling, exhilarating experience. And it was only possible because humans had chosen creativity over force, empathy over fear, and patience over impatience. Lena understood something essential. Size was not intelligence. Strength was not creativity. What mattered was the willingness to think, to explore, and to reach out in ways that others might never imagine. As darkness fell, the alien hovered silently, its massive form outlined against the stars. The drones continued their careful movements, forming patterns that now felt like a language being built in real time. Lena watched, exhausted but exhilarated. For the first time, humanity was not just trying to survive in the universe. They were connecting, understanding, and proving that even the smallest species could achieve the impossible. And somewhere deep within that colossal being, there seemed to be recognition, a spark of comprehension, a glimmer of curiosity that matched humanity's own. It was a beginning, a first conversation in a dialogue that might one day span worlds. Humanity had taken its first steps into a new era, one defined not by power, but by imagination, courage, and ingenuity. The adventure was far from over. The alien was still a mystery, vast and incomprehensible, and the humans were still tiny, fragile, and limited. But the first bridge had been built. And with it, the possibility of something extraordinary had begun. Days had passed since the first signs of real communication with the alien. Humanity's tiny drones had become a language of gestures and vibrations, a bridge connecting two beings separated by unimaginable scales. Lena Shah watched each sequence with careful eyes, her excitement growing with every response. The alien no longer simply mirrored the drones. It began initiating patterns of its own. It started with small gestures. A ripple along its enormous surface, repeated twice, paused, and then mirrored by one of the drones. Lena recognized it immediately as a kind of greeting. The alien was no longer just observing humanity. It was interacting, and it was curious. Scientists and engineers worked frantically to expand their repertoire, programming new drone sequences to respond in more complex ways. Every new pattern became a conversation, subtle but deliberate, with humans speaking in movement and the alien responding in light, motion, and vibration. One morning, Lena awoke to a new phenomenon. The alien hovered closer to the coastal research facility, its immense shadow stretching over the waves. This time, it moved with deliberate care, adjusting its enormous limbs with a precision that suggested focus, intelligence, and interest. The team monitored its gestures, attempting to replicate them with the drones, but they quickly realized something extraordinary. The alien was inviting them to learn. Lena felt her pulse quicken. For weeks, they had been trying to teach it about humans, to demonstrate intelligence, creativity, and problem-solving. Now, the alien was teaching them something, a subtle challenge encoded in its motions. Its gestures seemed almost playful, moving in patterns that suggested puzzles or sequences humans had not encountered. The team felt a mix of awe and nervousness. They were being tested, not through danger but through complexity. The first challenge came as a simple sequence of waves. The alien moved one massive limb in a pattern reminiscent of spirals, then paused. Lena studied the movements carefully. They resembled the Fibonacci sequence, but on a scale so vast it took hours to record accurately. "It's showing us a pattern," she whispered. "It wants us to understand it to respond correctly." The team immediately began planning. They had never attempted such a feat before. The drones, though precise, were tiny. Could they replicate a pattern that required enormous scale and perfect timing? Lena considered using the ocean as a medium, forming floating light arrays that could mirror the alien's motions. Each team member contributed ideas, merging science, art, and creativity. For the first time, humanity's smallness became an asset. The alien could perceive detail that humans could only convey through careful design, subtlety, and imagination. By nightfall, the preparations were complete. Thousands of drones hovered over the coastline, equipped with soft lights and vibration devices. Floating platforms on the water provided additional markers, forming a grid that allowed humans to replicate the alien's massive spirals. Lena stood at the observation deck, her heart pounding as the sequence began. Each drone lifted and shifted with precise timing, tracing arcs, curves, and loops across the sky and ocean surface. The alien watched with a quiet intensity. Every gesture it had made previously was mirrored perfectly, yet humans had added slight variations, small, deliberate adaptations that conveyed understanding, creativity, and thought. A ripple of light traveled across the alien's immense surface, moving slowly like the tide. The alien paused, then repeated the sequence, adding a new element, a subtle twist in the pattern, a shift that humans had not anticipated. Lena recognized it immediately. It was another puzzle. The alien wanted them to adapt, to think beyond mere replication, to create solutions that demonstrated understanding at a deeper level. The team felt the weight of the challenge, but instead of fear, they felt determination. This was humanity's moment, not of confrontation, but of imagination and ingenuity. Over the next several days, humans worked tirelessly. Each attempt brought new insight. Small errors in timing or alignment taught them how the aliens' perception worked. Its immense scale required humans to think differently, to consider patterns across time, space, and energy in ways they had never done before. Every success brought exhilaration. Every failure brought new understanding. Lena realized that the alien was teaching them not just about patterns, but about patience, observation, and perspective. As the sequences became more complex, the alien introduced new challenges. Its movements began to incorporate vibrations and subtle color shifts, patterns layered on top of patterns. The team quickly realized that this was a form of language, one based not on sound, but on rhythm, motion, and energy. Humanity had never communicated in such a way, and yet they were learning, slowly but surely. Lena began to notice something else. The alien seemed to respond positively to creativity. Simple replication was insufficient. When the humans adapted patterns, added variations, or demonstrated new sequences of movement that maintained the logic of the original, the alien's gestures became smoother, more expansive. It was as though it was smiling, in a way that could only be perceived through the gentle ripples and waves of its enormous body. One evening, the alien presented a particularly challenging sequence. It moved in a complex spiral that shifted in 3 dimensions, with subtle timing variations that required precision beyond human instinct. The team watched in silence, recording and analyzing every microsecond of the motion. Lena felt a spark of inspiration. They could not replicate the spiral with drones alone. They needed a larger medium. She proposed a daring plan. Using floating platforms and light arrays, they would create a living, dynamic display across the water's surface, a pattern large enough for the alien to perceive fully. Thousands of drones would coordinate to move lights in rhythm, while humans controlled timing, direction, and intensity. It was risky, exhausting, and would require absolute precision, but if successful, it could convey understanding on a scale the alien could comprehend. The night of the demonstration, the ocean glowed with coordinated light. Drones moved in perfect harmony, tracing curves and spirals that shifted with careful timing. Lena and her team controlled the sequence like conductors of an immense orchestra, aware that every gesture mattered. Above them, the alien hovered, its massive eyes, or sensory organs, following every movement. When the display was complete, the alien responded. Its enormous form rippled with light and vibration, moving in a way that suggested acknowledgement, fascination, and approval. It had tested humans, and they had succeeded. For the first time, humanity understood a new level of interaction with a being far larger, far older, and far more complex than themselves. The breakthrough changed everything. Humanity was no longer just observers. They were participants in a new form of communication, a dialogue built on creativity, ingenuity, and patience. The aliens' puzzles became opportunities to learn, and human solutions became proof that size, strength, and scale did not determine understanding. Lena realized that this exchange went beyond communication. The alien was teaching them about perspective, about thinking in ways they had never imagined. Its challenges required humans to look at problems from multiple angles, to adapt, and to innovate. Each successful response strengthened the bridge between species, building trust and mutual understanding. As days turned into weeks, the alien began introducing entirely new concepts. It created patterns that represented energy flow, movement, and balance, almost like a visual mathematics humans had never encountered. Lena and her team studied the sequences, adapting their drones and platforms to replicate and respond. The process was slow, but it was exhilarating. Each interaction revealed something profound about the alien, about the universe, and about humanity's capacity to learn. One night, as Lena rested in the observation chamber, she noticed the alien performing a sequence that seemed incomplete. It paused, rippling slowly, as if waiting. She realized it was asking a question, inviting humans to contribute in a way they had not yet done. This was different from previous challenges. This was not replication or problem solving, it was creation. The alien was asking humanity to invent. Excited, Lena gathered her team. They brainstormed, combining science, art, and logic to create patterns and sequences that were entirely new. Each idea was tested in drones, light, and energy displays. They discovered that the alien responded not just to accuracy, but to imagination, to originality, to the ability to see possibilities beyond the immediate. After hours of careful work, they presented their creation. The alien observed, paused, and then slowly moved its massive limbs, responding with a series of gestures that seemed to convey approval, delight, and perhaps even pride. It was a moment of connection unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. They were not just learning from the alien, they were sharing themselves, their creativity, and their intelligence in a way that the creature could understand. Lena realized that humans had reached a turning point. They had begun as tiny, fragile beings attempting to understand a creature beyond comprehension. Now, they were collaborators, participants in a dialogue that transcended scale, species, and even language itself. The alien had taught them patience, perspective, and the value of creativity. Humanity had responded with ingenuity, empathy, and imagination. As the sun rose over the ocean, casting light across the vast display of drones and platforms, Lena watched the alien hover silently, its massive form outlined against the dawn. It was still a mystery, still incomprehensibly large and still far beyond human understanding. But for the first time, it was a mystery that humans could engage with, a challenge that they could meet. The alien's presence, once terrifying in its scale and mystery, had become a source of inspiration. Humanity had learned that intelligence and ingenuity were not measured by size or strength, but by the willingness to observe, to adapt, and to imagine. The first bridges had been built, the dialogue had begun, and the possibilities, like the spiral patterns in the ocean and sky, seemed endless. Lena smiled, exhausted but exhilarated. Humanity was small, fragile, and imperfect, but they had reached where no one had ever gone before. They had touched the impossible, and the universe had responded. The alien's presence over Earth had become a constant, yet it no longer inspired fear. Humanity had learned to observe, to interact, and most importantly, to imagine. The massive being hovered above the oceans, its colossal limbs moving with grace and purpose. Its gestures were no longer random. They formed patterns of meaning, puzzles that challenged the human mind and expanded the boundaries of what they thought possible. Lena Shah stood at the observation deck, staring at the alien surface as it shimmered in the early morning light. The creature had begun performing sequences that were more intricate than anything they had seen before. Spirals within spirals, shifting patterns that resembled flowing rivers, waves, and even planetary orbits. It was as if the alien was communicating not just with movement, but with the very essence of the cosmos itself. For weeks, humanity's team had worked to understand these patterns. The drones could replicate many of the motions, but the alien sequences hinted at something deeper, knowledge that extended beyond the limitations of human technology. Lena realized that this was more than a game of gestures. The alien was sharing information, insights about energy, motion, and balance on a scale humans had never imagined. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One afternoon, as the sun reflected off the alien's shimmering surface, it began to project a series of light patterns across the sky. The lights shifted, forming geometric shapes that aligned perfectly with the positions of the drones below. The shapes were simple at first, triangles, squares, circles, but then they began combining, forming complex structures that moved in ways that seemed impossible. Lena and her team were astonished. The alien was teaching them advanced principles of energy manipulation and spatial design, but it was doing so in a language of motion and pattern rather than words. The team realized that each sequence was a lesson, a way of demonstrating cosmic principles through observation, interpretation, and experimentation. Over the next few days, the humans began experimenting with these concepts. Using drones, light arrays, and floating platforms on the ocean, they recreated the alien sequences, testing how different motions affected energy flow and structure. Slowly, they began to understand that the aliens' gestures were more than visual. They represented forces, balance, and harmony. It was teaching humans to think in three dimensions, to perceive energy and motion as one unified system. Lena marveled at the possibilities. If they could truly grasp the aliens' lessons, humanity could develop technologies far beyond anything they had imagined. Energy systems, transportation methods, even new ways to harness natural forces, all could be achieved if they learned to understand the patterns the alien was showing them. It was a gift, a window into a universe of knowledge that had been closed to them until now. The alien seemed pleased with their progress. It moved its limbs slowly, gracefully, each gesture precise and deliberate. It had begun introducing variations in its patterns, subtle twists that challenged humans to think creatively rather than simply replicate. It was testing not just intelligence, but imagination, adaptability, and problem-solving. Lena realized that the alien was teaching humanity to think like it thought, on a scale that stretched beyond size, strength, or even time. One evening, the alien introduced a challenge unlike any before. It extended one of its massive limbs above the ocean, creating a pattern of waves and pulses that interacted with the water below. The movements formed a puzzle of energy and motion, a system that required humans to coordinate multiple layers of drones, platforms, and sensors simultaneously. Lena gathered her team immediately. The task was immense, requiring precise timing, spatial awareness, and an understanding of the alien's logic. Every decision mattered. A single error could disrupt the entire system. Yet the team felt exhilarated rather than overwhelmed. They had faced impossible challenges before, and each time, ingenuity and patience had allowed them to succeed. They divided the task into sections. Some drones would replicate the energy waves, others would trace the motion of the limbs, while floating platforms created visual markers to help synchronize the sequence. Lena directed the operation, her mind racing as she coordinated human and technological resources. Hours passed as the team worked tirelessly, testing, adjusting, and refining every movement. As night fell, the demonstration began. Thousands of drones moved in perfect harmony, tracing curves, waves, and spirals across the ocean and sky. The floating platforms glowed with coordinated light, enhancing the perception of the complex patterns. Above them, the alien watched, its colossal form moving with subtle adjustments as if offering guidance and encouragement. The team held their breath as the sequence reached its climax. The drones and platforms formed an enormous spiral that expanded outward, perfectly synchronized with the alien's gestures. A ripple of light traveled along its surface, shimmering like a reflection of the patterns humans had created. The alien paused, hovering in stillness for a moment that seemed eternal. Then slowly, it began a new motion, a sequence that mirrored humanity's creation while introducing entirely new concepts. Lena realized immediately what this meant. The alien was no longer just teaching, it was collaborating. The patterns it introduced were lessons, yes, but they were also invitations for humans to expand, to invent, and to contribute their own ideas. Humanity was no longer passive observers. They were participants in a dialogue of cosmic understanding. Over the next several days, humans and the alien worked together in this new rhythm. The alien introduced sequences representing energy flow, spatial relationships, and harmony between motion and force. Humans responded with drones, platforms, and light arrays, adding subtle variations that demonstrated creativity and adaptation. The interaction became a partnership, a dance of intelligence that transcended scale, species, and even language. Lena noticed something extraordinary. The alien sequences often mirrored natural phenomena on Earth, the flow of rivers, the patterns of clouds, the movement of stars. It seemed to be teaching humans to perceive the universe not as separate systems, but as interconnected forces, all moving in balance and harmony. Humanity's understanding of energy, motion, and design began to expand in ways that no textbook or laboratory experiment could provide. For the first time, humans were seeing the universe through the perspective of a being far larger, far older, and far more experienced. And yet, the alien also seemed fascinated by human ingenuity. It adapted its lessons based on the human's responses, introducing new challenges that encouraged original thinking and problem-solving. Every success reinforced the bridge of understanding that had been built between species. One morning, Lena observed a remarkable sequence. The alien's movements created a three-dimensional spiral that expanded across the sky, while pulses of energy shimmered along the ocean surface. The pattern was intricate, layered, and dynamic, yet it contained a clear logic. Lena realized that this was an invitation to invent, to create something entirely new that would contribute to the sequence rather than merely replicate it. The team worked tirelessly. They experimented with drones, floating platforms, and light arrays, combining motion and energy to create patterns that complemented the alien's gestures. The resulting display was breathtaking. Waves of light, energy, and motion intertwined across sky and ocean, forming a living, dynamic tapestry of understanding. The alien hovered above, observing with what seemed to be satisfaction and delight. Lena felt a deep sense of pride and exhilaration. Humanity had begun as small, fragile beings attempting to understand a creature beyond comprehension. Now, they were collaborators, contributing to a dialogue of intelligence that spanned size, species, and even perception. The alien had taught them lessons of energy, motion, and harmony. Humanity had responded with creativity, patience, and insight. Together, they were building something extraordinary, a shared understanding that transcended fear, limitation, and scale. As days turned into weeks, the interactions continued to grow in complexity and depth. The alien introduced patterns representing more advanced concepts, interconnected systems, energy cycles, and balance across scales of motion. Humans responded with ingenuity, creativity, and innovation. Each sequence built upon the last, expanding understanding in a way that no single being could achieve alone. Lena realized something profound. Humanity had begun to perceive the universe not just as a place to survive, but as a vast system of interconnections, energy, and balance. They had learned to think beyond size, beyond strength, and even beyond conventional logic. The aliens' teachings were shaping human minds, inspiring new ways of thinking, inventing, and understanding. For the first time in history, humans were not just learning from their environment. They were learning directly from a being whose perspective encompassed the cosmos itself. And the alien, in turn, seemed fascinated by human creativity, adaptation, and problem-solving. It was a mutual exchange of knowledge, a collaboration that transcended fear and limitation, a demonstration of what could be achieved when two intelligent beings chose understanding over conflict. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting light across the vast ocean display, Lena watched the alien hover silently, its immense form shimmering with energy. Humanity had learned to communicate, to solve problems, and to collaborate with a being beyond comprehension. And yet she knew there was still more to discover. The alien's knowledge was vast, its perspective cosmic, and its lessons far from complete. But one thing was certain: humanity had proven itself capable of understanding, creativity, and collaboration on a scale never imagined. The bridge had been built, the dialogue had begun, and the possibilities for discovery, innovation, and connection were limitless. Lena smiled, feeling exhaustion, exhilaration, and hope all at once. The alien was no longer a mystery to fear, but a teacher, a collaborator, and a window into possibilities that humanity had only begun to imagine. Together, they were exploring the universe not as conquerors, but as learners, creators, and partners in understanding the vast, interconnected tapestry of existence. And as the alien hovered above, massive and awe-inspiring, Lena realized that this partnership was not just a milestone. It was the beginning of a new era for humanity, one defined not by fear, domination, or survival, but by curiosity, ingenuity, and the limitless potential of understanding.